I think even if the band ended tomorrow and I wanted to play any music for the rest of my life, I would be stuck playing that song regardless.
You're listening to OurSpace with Matt Vettese.
Welcome to OurSpace with Matt Vettese. This is a show for millennials, some Gen Z and Gen X as well, that grew up listening to emo, pop punk, and all sorts of music under the alternative umbrella. You know, the kind of stuff that got us bullied in high school for listening to it. It's a show that allows us to connect with the bands that we grew up loving and, of course, discover new music in the same spirit of MySpace. But this isn't MySpace. This is OurSpace, and OurSpace is now powered by elderemo.com. They want to do the same thing, except they want you to do it in style with a bunch of awesome t-shirts, hoodies, and more. Whether you're heading to Warped Tour or waiting for your next show, they've got you covered with early 2000s peak scene lore t-shirts, some kitty shirts, really cute one that says Stink 182, and even stuff for your furry friends, like a little bandana that says Motion Kitty Soundtrack. Plus, if you head over to elderemo.com now and use the code OurSpace, you'll get 15% off your next order. Link's going to be in the description of this episode as well. Hello, and thanks for watching or listening to another episode of OurSpace with Matt Vettese. I'm super excited about this episode. Oh my God, I got Free Throw on the show. Yes, Free Throw, one of the best emo bands in the scene right now. They are dropping their 6th studio album on March 27th. Of course, go and pre-save that record. Moments Before the Wind is what it is called. And we talk a whole lot about that record in here, from what surprised them the most, what has changed the most with this record, what you can expect, because this episode obviously is out before the album is released. So any comments on what you think or what you want to hear, leave those right now on YouTube or Spotify. If you're listening to this episode after the album has come out, please let me know what you actually think of the record itself. Me personally, I do think that this record takes Free Throw in a bit of a new direction while still acknowledging and keeping the core pieces of what makes Free Throw. We're going to talk a lot about this. We talk a little bit about emo at the end of it and where Free Throw fits into the emo genre as well. We talk a little bit about the upcoming tour that they're going to be on for this. So I'm super excited for you to hear this chat. Let's jump right on into it. But really quick, before we do, please go and hit that subscribe button on YouTube or hit that follow button on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave a 5-star review. That is the best way to support the show. All right, here's Cory and Larry of Free Throw. Free Throw has a new album coming out March 27th called Moments Before the Wind, and we're joined today by Cory Castro and Larry Warner. Thank you so much for coming on the show, guys. How's it going?
How's it going? Yeah, it's going good for me.
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah. Thanks for having us on here. This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show. This is your 6th record that's coming out. And I mean, a lot has changed, I'm sure, for you guys personally, the music, I mean, everything going on in the world. I think the one thing I'm most curious about with this record is what parts of this record to you feel familiar and what parts feel different?
There's definitely some familiarity there. Like, I feel like we've developed a sound that we've kind of had throughout the years that definitely rears its head throughout the record. But things that feel different, I think we were just like really open this time to just letting ideas fly, kind of having fun with it, not putting ourselves in a box, and just kind of being like, hey, whatever we write, let's see where it goes.
Yeah, I agree with Cory on that. Like, there's definitely like moments where I'm like, oh, this is like, I don't want to say like classic Free Throw sound or like something that like feels very familiar to us. And then there's like a good bit of parts like Florama Town, for example. That's something we've never dabbled in. Is something like kind of a little more like subdue or like a little more like a pretty version or like something so soft. And it was cool because we were just like running with it. We didn't think too deep into it. We're just like, oh yeah, it sounds awesome. Let's just keep going. Let's see how this goes. Instead of like kind of second guessing, being like, oh, this doesn't really sound like a Free Throw song. It's like, well, the 5 members of Free Throw wrote it, so it is.
That's a good way to put it.
That's a very good way to put it. Have you ever felt in the past like you were maybe in a box or had to kind of contain things to a box?
We've definitely kind of felt the pressure before from like, just, we didn't want to disappoint like fans or anything like that, really. Or like, we didn't want it to sound like we had gone too far into left field or anything like that. I know, like, as a music fan myself, I definitely have like my, subjective tastes. I think we all do, as listeners. And, it's always kind of like a shock to the system when you hear something that a band has done that you have loved before, but then it's completely different. Sometimes I love that, and then there's other times, obviously, where I'm kind of like, it's not really for me. But I think that, with the creative process and as a musician, you kind of find yourself wanting to stick to the things that have worked before a lot, or like stick to the things like, say, like, our most popular song, the song we're going to have to play until the day we die, Larry, is 2 Beers In. I think even if the band ended tomorrow and I wanted to play any music for the rest of my life, I would be stuck playing that song regardless. But in that, that song really worked and helped to give us a career off of our first record. And, I think we find ourselves kind of at times in the past have found ourselves kind of wanting to like, oh, we got to make like a 2 Beers In for this record or something like that. And I think this time we were kind of just like, like, let's just have fun, make music. And I mean, we've always kind of done that, but there definitely have been times when I feel like we've pressured ourselves a little bit to remain, we got to sound like us. But then, like Larry said, if it's written by the 5 of us, then it it is us. So like, I think it's a part of getting older and just being wiser and not having to fall into the old traps.
I feel like a lot of like previous records that we've done, we would like spend like months on end, like we're like writing it before we would go to the studio, and like we would have like demos and everything we'd bring to the studio to kind of show producer Brett. And this time we like just showed up with like 3 like iPhone memos, and we kind of wrote everything while we were there. And I think that kind of helped us like let some of that pressure off. Because I think the more us as like a collective group of people, the more we like would work on a demo, the more we would like kind of take away from the original idea, and it ended up with like inherently sounding more and more like in a box. And just writing majority of this record just without knowing what it was going to be, and it helped us just be like, oh, this is a song. We're just writing songs now. We're just like in the flow of it, and kind of helped like I use the term like demo-itis a lot, and we would we like songs from like previous records. If you listen to like the first voice memo we ever did to the like last demo we brought to the studio, the song changed like heaps in its own, and this time it's just like kind of just cut down to what it is.
Yeah, you gotta almost like kind of get tired of some songs by the time you finish writing them after going through the process of cutting it up and changing it so much. Like, do you ever disassociate with a song after it's gone through that whole cutting board process?
I feel like The Corner's Dilemma was one, because whenever we had the idea for that song, it was completely different. It sounded nothing like the idea. The only thing I'd stayed on that one was just the intro riff that Jake wrote. And I remember whenever we finished recording that record, I was like, I have no idea what I played now. It's like the song has changed like 4 different times.
That song was on our 3rd record. And I remember after the record, or like after I finished recording all the tapping at the end of that song, I was like, I never want to hear the song again. I was like, I'm over it. I'm done.
And now it starts the majority of our sets.
We play it like we play a show.
Now that's another one that you need to play on every single set.
Yeah.
But I do think it really was a good thing for us this time, going in without a lot written beforehand, because I think Larry is right. I think like we usually like tend to stress over it a lot more when we're like spending a lot of time. I think we kind of get lost in the sauce a little bit sometimes when we're trying to demo things out and come up and like write songs ahead of time. And this time going in without a lot, I think we only had like 2 demos, maybe if that. And we spent more time at the studio this time as well. So like being able to be there and just kind of be in that creative space, it really took away from the whole like, we have to write so many songs before we get to the studio. We have to be prepared, like it going in with the idea of us not being prepared actually helped us, I think, be a lot more creative in the moment.
It sounds like I've listened to the record, and the first time listening through, I was like, oh, okay, this kind of sounds like a newer free throw sound, or like a newer direction that the band is going in. But also at the same time, there's a good chunk of the free throw that we kind of know and love in there as well. So it's kind of like a shift into a different direction without a full like 180, at least from my first impressions of listening to the record. And I know that you guys are really big on themes with your records. So what was the theme for this one, and how did you come up with it?
So the theme for this one, thematically, when I was writing a lot of the lyrics, I was explaining it to the guys, like of being like in this liminal space, but like inside your head, kind of almost like the back rooms, but like in your brain, instead of like, no clipping through a wall or something. And so like that was what the initial theme really started out as, is like kind of like this whole liminal space of familiarity, but going through these same issues over and over again, and kind of being like constantly in this long hallway that you can't really get out of. But while we were in the studio, I found out that I was going to be a dad, which can happen at any second right now. So if I end up having to run away, that's probably why.
Yeah, I saw the Instagram post. It said early 2026. So
we're
in early 2026.
Like end of next week, beginning of the week after, I think, is the actual due date.
Congratulations, by the way. By the time this episode comes out, you're actually going to be a dad.
More than likely. But like finding out while we were in the studio writing that I was going to be a dad, like it gave me, like an ending to the theme in a way, like, because I had felt for so long like I was like trapped in this hallway, or like at the precipice, like on this threshold. And like that actually felt very clarifying. Learning that, like, I immediately, once I was writing like some melodies and working on some lyrics with Brett, the producer, and I got a text which was informing me that I was going to be a father. And I looked at him and was like, yeah, I need like 10 minutes to kind of process this information. And I immediately came back and just started writing what would be the final song on the record, The Waters of Life, which is about learning that I am going to be a dad. Like, that's why it's talking about having to take a flight home, explain, to my parents and all kinds of stuff. But like, it gave me like a light at the end of the tunnel in a way, to where, a lot of the record talks about this very like dramatic, like traumatic, I should say, time where I'm kind of like stuck in this rut. And like, I feel like I keep going through the same things over and over again. And that moment at the end, which is the end of the record, felt like stepping through a door. It felt like almost having this like renewed purpose in a way. So I guess the theme really comes down to now is like the whole idea of being trapped in that hallway leading up to the moment of being able to step through the door to get out of that hallway in a weird metaphorical sense, I guess.
Is that hallway kind of like a limbo?
Yeah, for sure. The way it was working out in my brain is like almost kind of like having all these different liminal spaces, but existing in them all at one time. You know what I mean? Like almost like being in a bunch of different places at once, but like not able to really traverse anywhere.
How long did it take you to write the closer after finding out that you were going to be a dad? Because it sounds like you left for 10 minutes, digested it, came out and just banged out a banger.
Kind of what happened, yeah. I waited to write one of the refrains of it until like I told the rest of the guys, I kind of wanted to get that like feeling out of the way, because I didn't want to go and just like bang it out and then like them hear the song and be like, what is this about? Oh, surprise, guys. I'm going to be a dad. So I wrote a lot of it, like especially like the first verse and stuff, like right then. It just kind of came pouring out. After I told the guys, I kind of like revisited it, went back and went, all right, I know what I got to do now. But I mean, total time for me to write the lyrics, I'd say like an hour and a half of like total time, spanned over maybe like a day or two.
Did finding out that you were going to be a dad change the way or affect the way that you write music, or was just this the one song that you've kind of written since finding out at this point?
I've definitely like been writing a little bit since. I don't think it really changed the way I write music. I'm a very hard on your sleeve writer. I write a lot about my actual life, and I take a lot of inspiration from my actual life. And I always feel like writing lyrics to free throw songs, especially for me, is like it's like a nice therapy, like a self therapy in a way. I feel really it's really helped me throughout the years to be able to just like actually like get things off my chest using the band, and it also been very good to have so many people relate to it over the years. That actually helps me out a lot more than people would think. So as for like changing the way I write, I don't really think it's changed the way I write. I think my writing style is I'm kind of stubborn when it comes to it, kind of set in my ways. But it's definitely influenced my writing a lot.
I want to talk about the second last song on the record. This Dollar General Can't Rob Itself. I think that was the notable standout on the first listen through. I think because the whole tone from the record changes, it slows down, all of that. Can you tell me what the story is behind this song in particular?
That song, it relates back to, a time when my partner and I were like really going through a rough period. A lot of the record relates to that time. Over the last couple of years, we've had some ups and downs before we really finally locked in, and decided that what we were doing was what we wanted and what was right. And then, eventually became parents. And that song like also kind of relays back to some older free throw songs. It has some older lyrics, like kind of interspersed throughout. It was a song that kind of just came to me. One day they were like working really hard on another song, and I was supposed to be writing lyrics for that song. But I was feeling like kind of just, it wasn't clicking for me at the moment. So I just kind of picked up an acoustic guitar and started playing that. And I ended up like kind of writing that song like right there. Actually, Jordan, who was there taking pictures and filming some behind the scenes stuff with us, happened to come in and capture me like writing that song on video. So maybe we'll get to see it someday. I'm not sure. But I ended up just kind of writing it. And then I showed it to Brett and the guys. And Brett was kind of like, I don't think it really needs anything. I think it's kind of all there. It was like one of those ones where I think I had something I'd been wanting to kind of get out, and it just kind of appeared. I feel like that happens to me a lot when it comes to especially lyrics. Not usually like when it comes to writing an actual song, but like when it comes to lyrics, sometimes it just comes pouring out and I don't even realize that it's happening until it's happened. I like to look back on some of our songs sometimes like, damn, I can't believe I wrote that. That's pretty sick.
I think you said something there about maybe one day we'll see that video, and it reminded me, I wanted to ask, when you talked about The Coroner's Dilemma and how that song has changed so much, is there ever a part of you that thinks like maybe one day we'll actually release some of these demos so people can see how much the songwriting has changed? Or are you kind of like, no, let's keep that behind the curtain. We don't want people to see the thought process behind there.
As for Coroner's Dilemma, I don't think anybody wants to hear that.
I don't think you'll be able to look at the song the same. You'll be like, God, this song is awful.
It was also like pretty bare bones, super repetitive kind of stuff. But as for other songs, yeah, I mean, we've talked about that a lot over the years. I know that like there's been some talks about putting out some demo stuff, old demos and stuff that we have before. I don't know if there's anything actually confirmed. Sorry, my cat is going crazy right now. If there's anything like truly confirmed, but I know that we've definitely talked about it. It's definitely something that's set in the back of our heads a lot, and something that I know that Larry, we'd probably want to do.
We did a cool thing for the Those Days Are Gone deluxe tour. You were able to purchase a cassette that had like
we did do
4 or 5 demos of those songs on them, and it was cool to go back and listen to it again, because like I remember recording some of those demos in like Zach and I's kitchen. And it was cool. Like it was definitely nostalgic being able to go back and listen. And not that long ago, I found a few demos from whenever we were recording "Bury Your Mind."
Oh wow, yeah. I also have like a treasure trove of demos from
just like random eras.
Yeah,
I just remember whenever we went to the Converse studio, there were a few that we went there, and I was just like, wow, this is crazy. Like I can't.
Yeah, it feels like a million years ago now.
I was like, what? I was like, what the fuck is this song? Like, I couldn't figure out. Sorry to swear on here. I don't know.
No, you're good to swear on here.
Okay, cool. As soon as I said that, I was like,
Yeah. No, you're good. It's the internet.
Okay, cool. But I was like, what the fuck is this song? And I was like, oh, that is Randy I Am the Liquor. It just had a different title. And I was
that
like,
different?
That makes sense. The song itself sounded relatively the same. It's just less confident in like what we were playing because I think we were still trying to figure it out. But I think it'd be cool. Like I love hearing that from other bands and like other artists, seeing how demos are. I'd be super open to just letting people hear, except for the Corner's Dilemma, because
Yeah,
that one
I
just
think that one can
just
stay in the
so.
vault.
yeah, that can stay in our Dropbox.
Which song on this record surprised you the most when it was finished?
I'd definitely say Floromatown.
Yeah, I was gonna say that
It just
one.
came together so well. Deviancy. I feel like that's one like I haven't gotten to talk about a lot to anyone. That song really, it was one of the last ones I finished the lyrics and singing for and stuff. But like that song just really ended up coming out exactly how I wanted it to come out. It was kind of a surprise because like we tend to do a darker song every now and then, especially most records tend to have at least like one kind of darker song on it. But I don't know, that one just really like when I heard the final version, I was like, yeah, this is good.
I remember the song that plays right before it is, and they kind of flow into each other. And
Oh, yeah.
the like 20-second iPhone memo I wrote for it is like the end of that first progression is just that dun 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 dun, and I was like, oh, we'll figure something out from there. And it's crazy to see that song just literally led from me like figuring out this like, oh, I think this could be like a cool intro note. And yeah, I was actually playing that one the other day, trying to figure out how to like kind of like relearn it all. I was like, this one's like, it's super moody.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that until now, though. The crazy one is the song before that song is the first song that we finished
Yep.
for the record, like finished recording and everything. And then that song is the last song that we finished recording for the record. So the fact that they flow into each other is kind of crazy to me.
Two completely different
They were not
headspaces.
built for that.
Yeah.
No, it just happened.
Do you have a song on the record that's a particular favorite that you're most excited for people to hear?
I'm really excited for people to hear For Those Who Come After, just because it's really based. The title references and the lyrics are based on how the game made me feel. But the game Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which came out last year, actually won Game of the Year. Let's go. I'm excited for that one. I really like that song a lot. It's just kind of like a shorter but very well put together song. It feels very, very like it's like a chef's kiss song for me. You know, when I hear it, I'm like, oh yeah, we did it great with that one. And I'm also very excited for people to hear The Outlaw Star because it's one of the more upbeat, faster songs on the record. And I feel like we haven't really gotten to do like a nice upbeat,
Like
faster song in a
punk-based
while.
song.
Yeah, so it's I'm really excited to see how people feel about that one, hear that one.
Yeah, it's definitely a standout.
I really want people to hear the need for a post-credit scene. That was one that I had like that was the one demo like kind of a little more fleshed out that I brought to the process, and it was just like 40 seconds of me just playing like the second verse, and I was like, oh, this part could be really cool. And I think it like ended up being one of like the largest like landscape songs. Like there's so much that goes on in that one.
If Moments Before the Wind had to be summed up into a feeling rather than a story or a theme, what would you say it is?
There's a really good part on Floromatown that kind of, I think, captures it really well. And it talks about, there's this thing called the golden hour. I know that a lot of people that have Instagrams and stuff would know about this. You know, it's a certain time of day when the sun is like about to set, and it kind of like lights everything up in this like golden hue and glow. A lot of people love to take selfies during that time outside. But there's like a lyric on Floromatown that talks about how, being enamored by the glow, like opening the curtains as the hour turns gold, And I think that's kind of like, it kind of captures the idea of the record of like kind of, that day you've spent kind of vegging out on the couch, curtains are closed, it's kind of dark, moody. And then, at the end, with the last song being about, me learning that I'm going to become a father, it's kind of like opening up those curtains and letting the light kind of come in. And I think that's a really good way to put it that I haven't had a chance to think about or put it in. But like, I think that captures it really well.
And what about you, Larry? How would you describe it?
I think Cory nailed the head on that exact moment. And if I had to pick one other bit of a song, it would kind of be like right near the end of Waters of Life. There's like a moment there that I absolutely just like, if you feel so vulnerable and you're like, what is about to happen? And then it just like the end just like hits you harder than you could imagine. And I think that capsules like it does like a good way of showing the whole record that it's like we can still be super loud, we can be like heavy hitting, but we're also like not afraid to kind of like dial back and just be like as like open and just like vulnerable as we possibly can be.
Absolutely. You guys are about to take this record on the road as well. What are you most excited for on this particular run?
Being straightforward, we're going to be on a bus for this tour, so I'm really excited about that. But outside of that, I'm really excited for the level of production that we're putting into it. I'm really excited about the bands that we're bringing. Like we always kind of have this like ethos of like when we do headlining tours or anything that we want to bring bands that we think are awesome and like, that we want to help push forward. We don't really ever truly think of tours in terms of like, oh, what bands are like big, like who's gonna, help ticket sales. It's like, if it wasn't for bands taking us out on tour, we were, a younger band and like a smaller band, then I don't think we would have near the career that we have today. So it's kind of like we want to pay that forward. So we always try to find like bands that we really enjoy and really like, and that we feel like we want people to hear, to take out with us. And I'm really excited about the lineup on this coming tour. Wakely is really good. I'm excited for people to hear them.
They're like one of my current favorite. I think they made their way into my like Apple Music Wrapped. I think they were like number 9 on most.
Yeah, like your end of the year list.
Yeah, and I was like, hell yeah, that's super cool. I'm glad that we're getting to play some shows with them. I think the production is going to be super cool as well. It's like the most adventurous we've ever been with anything like that. And I'm just really excited to like dive in and like put on like a really good show. I think we figured out like what we kind of like got a taste for it on the Those Days Are Gone tour, where like we felt a little more professional about like, and we were like a little more like mindful of like what we were doing and like trying to make sure like if someone's gonna spend like 25-30 bucks to come see us on like a random Tuesday, we're gonna make sure it's gonna be the best performance that they can get. It's gonna make sure it's like they're gonna get like a super cool show out of it and make sure it feels like it's worth their time. I think we're a lot more mindful of like, it's like, but like the lighting show is going to be insane. The bill is curated super well. I want to curate the set list and also like play a lot of new songs, play some older songs, maybe play some songs we haven't played in a few years, and just like cover the bases to where like as like a consumer and just like a lover of music, you're gonna be like, wow, that was a great way for me to spend my night, and I hopefully won't forget it.
I have to give you a lot of credit as a band for your live performances as someone that's not only seen you a bunch of times, but also for the fact that your shows are very accessible and you do bring a lot of awesome, up and coming artists on your bill as well. Like you mentioned, I mean, I just look, I'm from Toronto, so I'm Canadian. So my prices are in Canadian dollars, but $47 on this tour to your Toronto show, which I think is super affordable for most people, especially in a time and age where concert tickets are just absolutely ridiculous for a lot of bands. So I think that that's super cool on your end of things. It's funny that you said this because I literally had this conversation yesterday about artists being on your bill that you think are really cool and you want more people to check out. Because as someone who has a platform about music and I feel like I stay pretty in tune with what's going on with the newer stuff as well as the older stuff, a lot of people will message me and ask me like, how are you discovering all of these bands? How are you finding these bands? And honestly, a big portion of that is by seeing bands that I like. Who are they taking out on tour? So I've found so many cool bands just by looking at the bands with the little teeny tiny font that are showing up and playing, 20 minutes after doors open. And I go, okay, well, who's this? If they've got, let's say, Free Throw's approval to bring on tour with them, and I like Free Throw, then I might like this band over here, like Wakely, and go and check them out and be like, whoa, these guys are sick. And all of a sudden now I'm going to go and check out this band the next time they're doing a headline tour and coming into my city, right? So I think that's a huge way. So I think it's really cool that you guys are taking more up and coming bands onto tour with you. This show in particular, it's called OurSpace with Matt Vettese. You can probably piece together it's a little bit of a play on the words of MySpace, because, thinking back to what MySpace was for me as a 13 and 14-year-old going on to it for the first time, is it was a cool place to, connect with the bands that I loved, but also to discover new music. And that's what I want my platform to be. I want to be able to connect with the bands that you love and find new music. So I can talk to Free Throw, and then I can talk to another band that maybe people have never heard before. One of the things that I do to wrap up each and every single show is I ask the bands that I'm interviewing, who are those most underrated bands that you're listening to right now that you think more people need to check out in the spirit of growing the scene. So an answer from both of you on who you think people should check out at this point.
For the past few days, I've been listening to this band that I really like a lot. They're called Not, like Not.
Okay.
I'm not sure where they're based out of. I'd have to look, but they are super awesome. It's probably what you would typically expect from someone who writes music for Free Throw to probably like, but like, it's just so good. And they have breakdowns sometimes that I'm like, I wish I wrote this. I wish I wrote this.
You're moshing.
Fuck, why didn't I think of this?
Anytime a band does something that I'm like, God, I wish I wrote that I know that I'm locked in.
Yeah. What about you, Larry?
I'll have to say it's one of our good friends, Hand Me Down, Tyler Zoomhoff from Kayak Jones. They're kind of starting to write. They're writing a few new songs, kind of like their first project since Kayak Jones kind of ended, and that was like such a formative band for me. And like I loved playing shows with them, and I always loved listening to Tyler's music. And I think this is like the one of the coolest departures that he could have done. And he's like releasing like a couple singles and like working on an LP. I feel like if anyone who is missing that Kayak Jones music, go listen to this now, because it is
awesome. I love that. I typically wrap up the show with that question, but because we still have a couple more minutes, I do want to ask you, because I am curious, especially we were talking about boxes before and whatnot. Where do you feel Free Throw fits into the emo category now, as things have just kind of evolved and there's so many different subgenres? I'm curious if you have any takes on that.
Yeah, I always feel like I joke with people about this all the time. I'm like, genre's just a construct, man. I always feel like emo is more of like an ethos than it is really like a true genre. Because if you think about all the waves and the different styles of emo, it's such a drastically wide spectrum. I like to think of emo in general as more of like, it's about, being emotional, being vulnerable, allowing like those moments to be recreated within music, whether it be through like heart on your sleeve style lyrics, or like it can be, super mathy and metaphorical if you want it to. But I think where we fit kind of is like something that I've always wanted Free Throw to be good at and to do, and that we've always felt like we did as a band, was to be a good bridge for people, to come from, say, maybe other genres like pop punk or like punk music, or, some bands like, I don't know, like Fiddler or something, they hear like Two Beers In or something, and be a good bridge for them to be able to go in and dive further into emo and bands that, were formative to me and Larry, like the Get Up Kids or Sunny Day Real Estate, or, eventually making their way into, things like Screamo, like Seisha, or like Rise of Spring. And I think we've always just been a really nice bridge for people who may not be super into that style of music to kind of travel themselves down the rabbit hole.
I think that's cool to hear you say that, because I think mentally that's kind of where I had you as well. Like when I talk to people about like who were some bands to kind of bridge that gap from maybe, let's say, third wave emo onto, fourth, fifth wave emo. I feel like a lot of people that maybe grew up listening to My Chem and the U's, let's say, in the 2000s, and then kind of fell off of discovering new music in the 2010s for whatever reason. They became parents or got jobs and didn't want to discover or weren't actively looking for new music anymore. Now want to kind of go back and bridge that gap. Free Throw is sort of that perfect transition. I even use you guys as a transition for my brothers in terms of getting them into more of the Midwesty stuff. I'm like, all right, listen, you listen to the stuff that I listened to in high school, and here's Free Throw, and then listen to, Mom Jeans and Modern Baseball, and then kind of use Free Throw as that pipeline into that type of stuff. And I mean, it works.
Yeah, I mean, that's we've always kind of considered ourselves like right there in that, like to fit in that space. It's just always felt like the right place to put us, because we're definitely influenced by like both sides of the coin. So like it feels like we're the ridges on the outside of the coin,
Yeah. It was definitely crazy to see on the we recently just did a tour with Silverstein, and they're kind of like that like early 2000s emo, and seeing so many people like come up to us being like, you're like one of my favorite new bands I discovered. I was like, fuck, we've been a band for like a decade. And it's just like, I was like, that's cool that you think that we're like a young band, but like, it's cool. But like, it made me think of like exactly what you were saying, like bridging that gap from like someone who like loved My Chemical Romance in like 2004 or something. And now they hear this and they're like, oh, this is what it's kind of going down.
Yeah, I always like to describe my audience as the millennial that grew up loving emo, fell off for a little bit, and is now like rediscovering it. And there's always that gap in between of like the 2010s that I think a lot of people just kind of, I don't know, whether they went through like a hipster phase and now they're coming back to emo or whatever. But like there's so many bands that were there in the 2010s that I think may have gotten ignored by a large portion of the millennial generation that are now coming back to it, especially as festivals like When We Were Young become more popular and Warped Tour is back, that people are like, there's that, I guess, desire and market now for being like, all right, I fell off for a little while for whatever reason, but it's time to kind of get locked back in. I think there were a lot of people that even went from Blink-182 to completely missing out on even bands like The Story So Far and Neck Deep. And now they come back and they're like, what was I missing this whole time? This is crazy, right? So
yeah, it's like a whole entire like record store worth of music.
Right? And then not only that, once you kind of catch up on the 2010s, there's so much awesome new music that's coming out now in the 2020s. I always say it like emo now is better than it ever was. It's just not bigger than it ever was in the mainstream. Like we don't have an MTV anymore. We don't have alternative radio stations playing bands like My Chemical Romance. But I think there's more.
Hot Topic sells Funko Pops now.
Yeah, but there's more. I think people that are actively listening to it as a whole, it's just not as popular within, let's say, Hollywood, you know? But I think that bands that are coming out now are way more talented than a lot of the bands that even came out in the 2000s that I grew up listening to. I mean, you look at bands like Arm's Length and Ben Quad and a whole bunch of these other guys that are absolutely killing it right now. And if emo was seeing the same actual mainstream and mainstream media wasn't as algorithmic as it is now versus back then. Like back then, everyone was watching the same thing. You'd see Britney Spears and then you'd see My Chemical Romance, Helena, right? There was no sort of escaping it. Whereas now everything is so algorithmic that there's people out there with, 15 million followers on TikTok that I have no idea. And you have no idea who they even are, right? But to other people, they're massive celebrities.
Yeah, we don't have TRL anymore.
Yeah. So I think it's really cool to connect with a lot of the bands and continue growing that. And I think that it's really cool that a lot of people are going to rediscover and discover new music. I think that it's a very special thing. So I do appreciate you guys taking the time to come on the show to talk about your new record, talk about emo. And if you are watching this on YouTube, please remember to subscribe to the channel and go and pre-save Moments Before the Wind out on March 27th. Cory, Larry, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you for listening to Our Space with Matt Vettese. If you enjoyed yourself, please support the show by subscribing and leaving a review.